Hi, Sally Hurst here. Lots of stuff you can buy when you go in the art shop and you're faced with all those jars on the shelf. There's lots of stuff you can buy to enhance your acrylic experience, really, okay? They're going to change the viscosity of your paint. They're going to change the drying times of your paint. They're going to change the textures of your paint if you mix it with acrylics. You don't have to mix it with anything. You can use them as they are and then paint on top of them with acrylics or with oil and coal wax. Okay, the latter being is what I predominantly do. You can also make some interesting textural things that you paint on with watercolor. So these are some of the products we're going to play around with, and at this point you realize why you walk in the art shop, you see a bank full of stuff and you just panic and walk out, because the labels don't really initially give you any indication, and a lot of them all look the same and they have strange names. Okay, so my job really is to help unravel this for you so that when you go in the art store, you've got some idea of what you're looking for. And I'd also like to say that if it's an acrylic paste and gel, they are all intermixable, okay? As long as it's acrylic, obviously. So all the brands are intermixable. You don't have to worry about that in any way whatsoever. I'm predominantly using Golden because I'm sponsored by them and that's what I like to use. They don't pay me, but they send me stuff to use my workshops, which is extremely generous. But if they're advertised as acrylic, then they're all intermixable. Let's have a little look at the kind of things that are possible to do with all these pastes and gels. You can push through stencils, you can build up textures, you can build up textural areas, you can lay products down that will absorb watercolors or inks. You can create textures that mimic, so for example, rust textures or wood type textures. You can create highly impasto paintings, very thick Van Gogh type impasto paintings, using all the pastes and gels before you even put any paint on, thereby really saving in your painting, because it's only the last layer, remember, that we're going to see. But basically, we can narrow this down to 3 types of product, okay? There's gels. Gels are made from polymers and they come very thick, so like extra heavy gel, which is as thick as peanut butter. They all look white because they're polymers. They all dry clear. Okay. So let's start thinking about what these gels are. There's so many in the store, you get so confused. But basically what a gel is, it's a plastic polymer. And what the confusion is, the fact they come in different ranges and different viscosities. Okay, so basically these are 3 that I tend to use quite a lot, but you don't need to have all of these. The best way of thinking about them, this is a regular gel. This is kind of like your regular, this is your medium viscosity gel. You can see from that the kind of peaks I'm going to get. If I left that as it is, that would dry like that. Basically a tube of paint is 50% regular gel, 50% pigment. Okay, so that's that. So this is going to be the same viscosity as a tube of paint. Okay, so this has the same, I'll put it down here. This is the same level of softness, so to speak, as that. The difference being, this will dry clear. These are white now, but they dry clear, which can actually explain for a lot of people the difference when they do a lot of painting with acrylics. And certainly when I first started using acrylics, it was exactly the same for me. You do a lot of painting, you go away and it dries. And when you come back, it's darker than you thought it was. It's not you going mad, trust me. It's the fact that when you're mixing these with a color, let's do it with that yellow while I have it there. When you're mixing these with the colour, not quite sure it shows up on the screen, but it's whiter. Let's put a bit more in. Okay, and if you imagine that's in your tube, You've got 50% gel and the rest of it is pigment load and other things, okay? But it's pretty much the basic recipe. This is lighter. When that's dry, it's darker, okay? So I'm just going to take those off because they're kind of getting in the way of what I'm going to do. But that might explain that. So they all dry clear. These will dry glossy, so they will dry shiny. You can get all of them, you can get as matte, but you can make any of these matte by adding a matting agent. These are how they are. So this is very soft, okay? That's really soft. This is what you call regular gloss, which is just like the stuff out of the tube. And this is heavy, and it's heavy, okay? It's a bit like peanut butter. The reason why I don't buy a heavy, this is extra heavy. I don't buy a heavy would be here, because if I mix this with this, I get a heavy, okay? So if you're just going to buy one, if you're starting off and you're just buying one, then I would just buy maybe a regular gel. That's going to kind of do what you need to do. But there's various, or if you've got enough money to buy a couple, I would go either end, and then you can mix a regular gel by mixing them together. Golden make a set of tubes. I think there's 6 in the set. Those of you who were doing the calligraphy workshop with me, it's a set I use a lot for printmaking, and you've got 6 different ones in there. If you're just starting off, you've got 60 mils of these in the tube. That might be a good way of going. Most of the gels tend to come in these big guys, okay, which are 8 fluid ounces, but they still work out. It still works out cheaper than paint, and that's another thing. Okay, you can mix any of these with your paint, whether that's heavy body or fluids of any brand, and it's going to stretch your paint. Okay, it's going to make it far more economical, and you can stretch it pretty much 50-50 before it starts affecting the pigment load. So it's always worth having in your studio a tub, a tub of a regular gel. If you're painting with these, a tub of a regular gel, mix it as you're working, mix it with your acrylic, and it's going to make your acrylic paints go a lot further. They're going to go 50% further, okay? You're going to save yourself bucks. So that's one reason why you might want them. Another reason why you might want them is because we want to change the thicknesses of how we paint, okay? Whether you want your paint to be softer, you want your paint to be stiffer, and there's reasons why you might want to do that. If I'm stenciling, I will use the heavy gel gloss because I want it to hold the shape of the stencil. Okay, so they're pretty much your basic ones. The next thing to think about are gels with things in. Okay, so glass bead gel, various gels you can get that have got stuff in them, okay, to change the texture. Those you can buy with stuff in, but I'll also show you how you can include stuff. You can put your own stuff into a gel to make it a texture gel. Okay. Two of the ones that I use quite a lot of are the glass bead gel. Basically it's a regular gel with glass beads in. I particularly like it for rusty effects. It dries quite blingy. Those glass beads are very reflective, which you might like, but I kind of cover them over, and I get that kind of pitted effect that you get on rust. So that's glass bead gel. The coarse pumice gel, they do a range of pumice gels. This is the coarse one. I like this one, again, for the same kind of reason. The pumice gels do not dry clear. By the very nature of adding pumice to it, you've made it opaque. So they do a coarse one, and I particularly like the fine pumice gel. So there's the pumice gels, glass bead gels, other ones exist. But you can get things, as I said, you can add things to it, but make sure you're adding things that are proprietary or sterile. This is just regular gel, okay? But I could, if I could dip that into my glass beads. These are beautiful. I tend to buy these on eBay. But if I mix those together, it gets very messy. I've made myself a glass bead gel, okay? So that's fair enough. And I've got some mica flakes here I'd use, silica sand I would use, the carborundum from printmaking I would use. But there is a company called Matisse who make a range of gels No, I'm sorry. They make a range of products to add to gels. You can get them from Jackson's. There's a link on my website. I think it's an Australian company, and these are called Derivan, and they're little dinky jars with stuff in. And that works out far more economic than buying a whole big tub of glass bead gel. Again, you can go, you've just got your regular gel, you can add stuff to it. So either stuff that you can buy on eBay, things like this. Glitter, for example, is quite nice. You're not going to use it necessarily to get the glittery colours, but it does, covered up, it does give a really nice texture. We have things called medium, which are basically just very runny gels. Okay, they're the same thing, they're just runnier. Some of them are designed to be slow drying for particular reasons. The most common one, this is gloss medium. Okay, and that's great as a glue. It's great as an isolation coat. It's great to seal your surfaces. So that's I buy that. I get that in 5-litre tubs. I use mountains of that. So that's gloss medium. Okay, also comes in matte. Then we've got other things. So this is a glazing liquid. Okay, which is you mix with paint. If that's quite runny, you'd mix it with paint if you're wanting to put a transparent glaze over your painting. Okay, and this is retarder. I don't know why the retarder doesn't come white. I need to ask the techie guys. Okay, basically that will slow down. They're very similar. This is thicker than the glazing liquid. I have used retarder as a glazing liquid. It slows down the drying time of your paint. Okay, there's one here I missed off, which I do use quite a lot. And this is like, look, you can see this is like water in terms of viscosity. That's airbrush medium. Oh, I think they're going to change the name of it because actually it has uses. It's designed to mix together with fluid paints so that you can blow them through an airbrush. Okay. A bit like a spray gun, but it has other uses. So I think if they haven't done already, they're going to talk about changing the name of it. That's as thin as water. I mix that with the fluid paints to make an acrylic ink. Okay, so that's why I use the airbrush medium, and it's really nice if you're doing things like dribbles because it's nice and it's lovely and thin. Finally, on this little pile, I've got something called GAC 100, ZAC 100, which again is nice and thin. It's certainly thinner than the gloss medium, and that's one of a range of specialist polymers that Golden make, 100, 200, 400, etc. And they're used for mixing with paints to make textile mediums, etc., etc. The GAC 100 is a really nice sealant one. It's a nice thin but very strong polymer, and it's recommended to use to seal wooden panels. Okay, now some of these are slow drying, and they need to be. So the glazing liquid is slow drying, the retarder liquid is slow drying, and the airbrush medium is slow drying. They have retarders in, they have things in them that slow the drying time of whatever paint you mix it with. All of these can be mixed with the other gels, all of these can be mixed with the other paints. Then there's pastes, and pastes don't dry clear, pastes dry opaque. And pastes again have different viscosities. Some of them are very thin and are designed to go on very thin. Some of them are very thick and gunky, but they will all do different things. So for example, fiber paste mimics a watercolor paper. It is absorbent. You can paste it on and layer it down, and you can throw watercolors at it and it will absorb. Okay, it's a fibrous, it has I can't say the word, some kind of cellulosey stuff inside. Some of the pastes are designed to make your paints hard and sandable. Okay, so the moulding pastes, for example, are designed for things like that. Some of the pastes are designed just to kind of build and give it bulk. The two I buy most of, well, one of them is fiber paste, which is this, which is a kind of cellulose. Think of it as watercolor paper in a tub. Okay, that's absorbent, it's fibrous, you can add that to canvas, it's flexible, It's delicious, actually. It gives a really nice texture. It's quite porridgey, okay, or oatmeal-y for those of you who eat things like that. That's fibre paste. I like that. Then there's hard moulding paste. This looks nice and soft now, but it dries hard. This one you can scratch into, you can score, you can sand down. So you can make your paints quite hard and sandable and scratchy with hard moulding paste. The only difference is, I say to that, these two are flexible. These you can put on canvas. These two you can't put on canvas because they're not flexible. You risk them cracking if the canvas moves. That's hard moulding paste. That's lovely. You can sand it down. They make a sandable one, but I particularly like that one. This is light moulding paste. Look at that. This you can build up about 5 or 6 centimeters. It's amazing. It's incredibly light. The tubs weigh nothing. Okay, it is. I don't know what it's made of. That's absorbent, not as absorbent as the fibre paste, but it's quite absorbent. But that's delicious stuff. I use that a lot. Okay, so it's light moulding paste. Again, it stencils beautifully. Finally, one that isn't an art product at all. This is ceramic tile adhesive. And I've been using this for at least 20 years in my printmaking and painting. Make sure you buy the waterproof variety that has polymers in it, so it's not going to wake up when you get it wet. But this is great. It's really sculptural. You can carve into this, you can scratch into it, you can use it through stencils. It will survive. It is archival. Don't worry about it. But it needs to be waterproof, and you need to use it on a hard surface like a panel. The final paste that is really nice to play with is their crackle paste. It is a paste, but this is what it does. Okay, it cracks, but I particularly like it. I don't recommend you use a lot of it. It's a bit of a one-hit wonder. That is all it does. Okay, and I certainly don't recommend you use it on a flexible surface like canvas or watercolor paper because it will just crack off. It's quite delicate, but it's great and perfectly fine and perfectly stable on a hard surface. You've also got something called grounds, which kind of overlap, and they are specifically designed to give you a certain surface, a ground. Okay, so an absorbent ground for pastels, for example, or an absorbent ground for watercolours. I hope that's unravelled some of this confusion for you. This set by Golden is a really good starting point though. You get 6 in there to play around with and build surfaces and mix with your paint or have underneath your paint or use to create some collagraph plates. I think the confusion comes is that technically anything you add to any paint is a medium. Okay, so technically even the gels are mediums, if that makes sense, and all the brands give them all different names, but really if it's in a bottle it's what I would call a gloss or a matte medium or a retarder or an airbrush thinner, etc. If it's in a tub and it's white, it's a gel. If it's in a tub and it has stuff in it, it's a paste. Enjoy.